Occupiers.
Occupiers.
Lawrence Lessig.
Lawrence Lessig.
So spring, like a fever, comes in waves. It rises, it peaks, and it breaks. And then it rises, and it peaks, and it breaks again, and again, and again, until it comes to life. If what you've started here is a spring, let's call it the American spring, then it is just the latest wave that has peaked and broken, and let's hope it is the wave that makes this change real. The first of these waves, I believe, happened on January 20th, 2009, when a man who called himself a reformer was sworn in as president just down the street. But very quickly, he demonstrated that though his campaign was about reform, his administration was about business as usual. And that frustration inspired a second wave. A wave of people whose politics is very different from many of ours, but whose motives, populists as they are, is very similar. A wave that peaked in what people call the Tea Party movement. And when the frustration from the failure of that wave to achieve its effect grew, there began on September 10th, 2011, the third, and I think the final great wave that will bring this change about, the Occupy movement in Wall Street and then around the world. That's clapping, right? That's cool. Yeah. Okay, now I'm a liberal. I know the cool thing to be these days is progressive, but old timers like we think about progressives and prohibition, so we're not progressives, we're liberals. I'm a liberal. I believe in the right of a woman to choose. I believe in gay marriage. I believe public education should be fantastic. I believe the government has a role to help achieve equality. I believe well-regulated markets produce wealth, but I think they need to be well-regulated. I believe in many things the government needs to do, and it needs to do better. I am a liberal, but I am not excited by this movement because it will make my liberal ideas more likely to come about because of your work. That's not what makes this movement extraordinary. Because my ideas, my liberal ideas, our leftist ideas are still the ideas of not yet a majority in our country, and no faction has the right, from the right or the left, to hold this country hostage in the name of their minority ideas. What is inspiring about this movement is its potential to talk about and teach the world, to teach our country, to rally our country around an idea which we all recognize and believe fundamentally, that this government is corrupt. Now, by corrupt, I don't mean Rod Blagojevich corruption. I don't mean Randy Duke Cunningham corruption. I don't mean the corruption of bribery. I don't mean the corruption that is regulated by criminal law. I don't mean that kind of corruption. That's not our Congress. Our Congress is not filled with criminals. Our Congress is filled with people who went there for whatever reason they might have gone there, but for a reason, and they try to do what they do in that world, given the world they live in. But that world forces them to be corrupt in a way that is fundamentally destroying this republic. That corruption is legal and in plain sight. Everybody recognizes it. When a member of Congress has to spend 30 to 70% of her time raising money to get back to Congress or to get her party back in power, she becomes corrupt. The system constantly adjusts as in light of what she knows she needs to do to raise the money to get back to Congress. In the words of the X-Files, they become shapeshifters, members of Congress, constantly adjusting who they are in light of what they need in order to raise the money, in order to get back to Congress. Money in large contributions. The max that anybody can give is $2,500 today in any one election cycle. And those people who give $2,500 in an election cycle, they are the people who matter. They are the people who count. So when you carry signs on Wall Street or here that say, we are the 99%, forget the 99%. We are the 99.95% of people who have never maxed out in a congressional election campaign by giving the maximum amount. It is 0.05% of America who has given $2,500 in the last election to a congressional candidate. 0.05%, and Congress listens to them. Congress does what they want. Study after study can demonstrate the way in which what they want bends Congress towards what Congress does. Now, there couldn't have been a better place in all of America to begin this fight than on Wall Street, because there is not a better place in America to demonstrate this corruption than on Wall Street. Wall Street, from the period of 1991 until 2008, essentially bought a system of deregulated markets. Deregulated markets completely against the theory of how to make markets work by making them transparent and responsible. They exempted themselves from those rules through derivatives. Derivatives took off in this huge shadow market that was unstable and eventually brought the whole economy down. Now, some people can say, I think rightly, what do you expect? All the economists were telling the congressman at the time, this made a lot of sense. All the economists said deregulation is the right thing to do. It was the zeitgeist. Of course, nobody knew those economists were on the pay of the very banks who were arguing for deregulation. Put that aside. We understand why Congress did what it did. But the terrifying fact, the truly terrifying fact, is not what happened before 2000. It's what happened after 2008. Socialism ever invented by man, where they socialized the risk and privatized the benefit, where they got the upside and we paid the downside. After that was demonstrated completely, after the dean of deregulation, Alan Greenspan, confessed he was, quote, mistaken in testimony on Capitol Hill about the ability of markets to take care of themselves. After all of that, Wall Street still had enough power to blackmail Washington into not changing the system of regulation fundamentally, so that the banks that were too big to fail are only bigger today. The system is just as unstable. Indeed, people whose salary are not paid by Wall Street say more unstable today than it was in 2008. And that is terrifying. It is the first time in American history where we have seen a collapse followed by no fundamental re-regulation of the financial services sector, because they have the power to block change from either the Democrats or the Republicans, because they can say to the Democrats and to the Republicans, if you don't back us, we guarantee you will lose in the next election. They are the largest single group of contributors to congressional elections of any in the country, and they hold this country hostage because of that power, because of that corruption. Now, this movement begins on Wall Street, and it points to that corruption, and it teaches the world about that corruption by demonstrating against that 0.05% that sets the rules for 99.95%. And sets the rules not because they're smarter, not because they have a better vision of what America needs, but because they have the power to block and control this political system. Now, my belief is, if this movement can take that message and carry it from Occupy Wall Street here to occupy K Street and to look down K Street at all the other places where exactly the same and talk about this problem as a problem of corruption, then this movement has the opportunity to unite people of very different views. I spent time at a Tea Party convention in Arizona talking to people who were deeply concerned about this country. They didn't talk about gay rights, they didn't talk about abortion, they talked about getting our government back in control. And those people, those grassroots, populist members of the party, forget their leaders, the populist members of the party, the Tea Party Patriots, the largest group not funded by the Koch brothers, that's the other Tea Party group, those people would agree with this point about the corruption of this system. And if this movement can begin to speak about these issues in a way that they can hear, where the focus is not against policies they agree with, for example, against the free market, but instead against a corrupted market. You may or may not believe in capitalism, but there is no one who believes in crony capitalism except the crony capitalists. And we can build a movement, you can build this movement, to unite America around this idea that the time for crony capitalism has got to come to an end. There is no one on the left or the right who defends the system of crony capitalism. They just practice it. And you and the movement you've begun can begin the recognition across America of why and how we need to end that corruption. Now you do that by framing this in a way that they can hear you and by inviting them in to your conversation. By explicitly bringing them in, again, not the leaders. They have their politics, their Fox News relationships. There are all sorts of idiocies about how they can like you or not like you because of the way you dress. Not those people. But the Tea Party members who've been out of a job. Because rather than caring about how steel workers have no work in Pennsylvania, they were worried about how Wall Street bankers might not be able to pay for their third mortgage and therefore guarantee them the bonuses that would assure their system survive. Those people have the same recognition of the corruption of this system that you do too, that I do too, that we all do. And if this begins as a way to teach America what we all in some sense believe and demands a change in that, at least that, then this movement will be the third and final wave of this spring to reawaken what is a hopeful promise of a democracy in America again. I can't express to you how grateful those of us who don't sleep in these parks are for what you're doing, for what you're making possible, for the imagination you're reinvigorating, for the hopefulness that we heard as a slogan defied by an administration that forgot the slogan. You are reviving this hopefulness. And if you can recognize we are part of a country that has many different souls, and we have to find the platform that unites these many different souls, you can speak to that platform. You can build that platform. You can bring a world in. Be good at thinking 2 steps ahead. That's why we believe in public education. It's not obvious at first, but think about it. 2 steps ahead and we have an educated populace. It's why we believe in blocking carbon emissions. Because we understand, we read some science, we understand about how global, we can think 2 steps ahead. You need to think 2 steps ahead. The Tea Party of the left is just a circus for Fox News and MSNBC. It's not the revival of democracy in America, but a movement that knits together people of honest but different convictions around a common recognition of a common identification of corruption is the potential to change this nation. please act on that potential. However fun the carnival, however tempting the drama, however great it would be to be as completely convinced of your righteousness as those on the right seem to be. Step back from that. Think 2 steps ahead and build the movement that could change this country. Thank you very much for this chance to talk. Anybody answer questions or? Sure. No questions? Yes, sir.
How do we reach out to those original Tea Partiers, like you said? You know, we're very different from them culturally. How do we reach out to them?
Yeah, so the question was...
Yes, speak up. Mic check. Mic check. How do we reach out?
How do we reach out
To those original Tea Partiers
to those original Tea Partiers
that you mentioned?
when there are cultural differences between us?
With respect, without challenging their integrity, without requiring that they agree with you on all the important issues you and I agree about, and by openly and explicitly saying, please come here, party with us. Let's talk about the future of America. Yes, sir.
I just have to give a shout out for, I'm one of the original Tea Party people. I run againstcapitalism.org. There are lots of people who are your friends that you might not think are your friends.
Yo, short phrases.
Stand up.
Mic check for
I'm
you.
sorry.
Start over.
No, do it.
You have friends. You have friends. With people that you might not think. With people that you might not think. Go to againstcapitalism.org and I'll send you that to you. Go to againstcapitalism.org. Thank you.
Behind you. No, the.
Yes, sir.
How do you propose that you define yourself as a liberal? There are contradictions within that and criticisms towards that. How do you propose that people here consider themselves to be liberals, deal with their contradictions first around class, race, before they even propose themselves as being in contradiction to the Tea Party, who also say, let's bring back America, which I've heard here as well.
Yeah.
Those kinds of contradictions, how do you propose handling those
Yeah.
contradictions?
Yeah, so our nation has a long history of not resolving these contradictions. And we got to get around to resolving them, I agree. But if the thought is we have to resolve them here first, before we can deal with these other issues, we're not going anywhere. I think there has to be a recognition. You know, I think back to those, you remember the cartoon of the wolf and the sheepdog fighting like hell. The wolf constantly trying to kill the sheepdog. And then at the end of the day, the whistle blows and they go off and they drink a beer, right? That's the distinction between the time when we need to fight.
One more time, because we're not getting it back.
Yeah. Let me try it simpler. So the question was, how do we work out the internal contradictions we have here? And I was trying to say in response that if we think we have to work out all those contradictions first, we're not going anywhere. So that's not to say that those don't have to be worked out. But we have to build the system within which they can be worked out sensibly. Yeah, I'm a lawyer. I'm sorry. I can't help myself. So that system is a democracy that people have trust in, have faith in. This democracy, 75% of people believe money buys results in Congress.
75% of people believe money buys results in Congress.
I don't know what the 25% are doing, but 75% believe that. And 11% of our nation has confidence in that institution of Congress.
11% of our nation has confidence in that institution of Congress.
Right? When we fought against the British Crown in the Revolution, there were more of us who believed in the British Crown than who believe in this Congress today.
When we fought against the British Crown in the Revolution, there were more of us who believed in the Crown than believe in Congress today.
So, if we can build a democracy which doesn't have that cynicism baked in,
We can build a democracy that doesn't have that cynicism baked in.
then there's a place for these differences, these contradictions to be worked out in good faith.
These contradictions to be worked out in good faith.
And all we need to do
All we need to do
to put the fight about the substance aside for a moment to build the platform within which we have that conversation. Yeah, sorry. All right.
Out of respect to everyone, I won't respond to that right now.
Okay.
Out of respect for everyone.
Yes, sir.
For the first meeting we might have with the Tea Party. What would you say would be the first three agenda items? What would you say would be the first three agenda items? For what we have in common.
Do we agree? This system is corrupt. Yes, we do. They do. We do.
Yes, they do, we do.
And what do we think the core of that corruption is? And they too believe. It is money inside the system. So agreeing on that alone, and committing to changing that, whether it's through Radigan's Get Money Out, or any other
That's the framework to build.
Okay, this is your major point. What is the solution to campaign finance reform to ensure that politicians aren't in the pockets of the lobbyists?
So the question was, what is the solution to campaign finance to make sure the politicians are not in the pockets of the special interests? All right. So the problem is, Congress follows its funders. 0.05% of the people. 99.95% of the The solution is to make the funders the people. So there's a family of reforms. Let's call them small dollar campaign reform. Arizona, Maine, and Connecticut all have these small dollar systems for funding their local elections. So a candidate takes $100, the government matches it 4 to 1. Example, in my book, I'm not selling my book, but my book, I have a different example, but they're all about small dollar funded elections so that the funders are the people. That's the point. Yeah.
How much of a problem is the influence that money has over the news, the information being disseminated, particularly in middle America,
Yeah.
not the coast.
Yeah. So her question is about the money in the media and how much of a problem is the money in the media in the same way that money affects politics. It is precisely the same problem. We live in a world where the business model for media is to appeal to the polls, to polarize America. And that's what they do. They make money, as Mark Meckler, founder of Tea Party Patriots, told a Harvard audience 2 weeks ago, by teaching us to hate each other. And that's how they become strong networks, MSNBC or Fox News. And there's nothing we can do about that right now.
Was the law that was called,
The Fairness Doctrine.
yeah, was that helpful or not?
It might.
I'm an independent journalist, just a citizen.
Contradiction, but a thin platform, a fundamental platform at least we can get on and use that platform to force the kind of change that makes it possible for people on the left and possible for people on the right to get what they want. My sacred text, Henry David Thoreau. There are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to one striking at the roots. And what we need to do is to build this movement of people who understand the root to these problems and to build more in this movement to strike at that root, because the hacking at the branches of evil is not getting us anywhere. Yes, sir.
Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, two parts here. Okay. Mic check.
Mic check.
First of all, do we need reform? Or complete systemic change? And the other part of the question is, do we need a third party in order to effectively have our concerns addressed?
Once you're going to unite 20% of America. If you want reform of this system, to build a system we could have faith in, you can get 80% of America. So I like 80 more than 20. Does a third party get us there? Look, I think we have a third party. It's called the people. What happens here, what's happening all across the world, and what's happening in 1,100 cities in the United States is that third party. And if this third party can invite the other third party in, the populist Tea Party people like this man over here who disappeared mysteriously, then this can be the third party. But the point is, don't believe that you're going to come into this district and win playing by their rules. We can't beat them playing by their rules here. They control this place. They don't control this square right now, but they control this city. And we have to build a movement that doesn't depend upon the same old rules played here, but comes from the outside. But that, I think is strategy down the road. We got to work that out over time. Right now, what we need is a commitment to this fundamental idea of reform, and that's what you can build.
Right now, what we need. Listen, that guy could speak for everybody.
Yeah, he's great.
It should be your mic.
Yeah, I like that.
I think there's a major conflict with the idea that we could reach out to the Tea Party. Just based on what I know of that group on a fundamental level. Though we may be in agreement on a few issues, they would be absolutely repulsed by the rest of the ideas that I generally hear circulating around.
By the rest of the ideas that I generally hear circulating around.
And I don't think that it would be beneficial to what we've got started.
And I don't think that it would be beneficial to what we've got started.
Which has a core of radical change.
Which has a core of radical change.
For us to begin trying to whittle ourselves into something that would be acceptable enough for the Tea Party.
For us to begin whittling ourselves something that would be acceptable to the Tea Party.
Without losing the spirit of what's going on here.
Yeah.
Without losing the spirit of what's going on here.
It's a great question. Extremely well framed. Let me say why we haven't connected yet. I don't want any compromise on my liberal views or on your liberal views or your radical views or whatever your views are. I'm not talking about compromising views. I'm asking whether we can't find a common ground without compromising the views and use that down here and fight for our fundamental views that are different from the views of the Tea Party about taxation or whatever the issue is you want to pick. I'm not talking about finding the happy mean, the middle between two extremes. I'm not talking about compromise. We liberals have been compromising way too long on our substantive beliefs. I'm talking about making it possible for liberal ideas to win, and possible, if the Democratic electorate wants, for conservative ideas to win. But neither set of ideas can win in a system where money buys the results in Congress. Neither end. So we fix that system, and then we fight about whether taxation should be higher or lower, about whether education should be triply funded from what it's funded right now, whether defense should be radically cut. These ideas I think we probably share, but we're not going to build a movement that unites a nation around those 30 ideas. We might build a movement that unites a nation around one or two ideas. And the question is that enough to facilitate the kind of reform that makes the rest possible? And that's the two steps I want you to think. I don't want to take the time from the General Assembly, right? So I just want to thank you again for letting me have an opportunity to talk and for what you're doing. Thanks. Thanks.
Could I